Well, hello everyone. Hey, Amy, thanks for being here. And I'm
Thank
Ed
you.
Parco. So
I was going to say thank you for being here too.
I try. All right. I know you bring it. It's been what a little over a week. We didn't have one last week, but we pretty much have everything going forward. And if people don't know, we record these once a week, but then we put it live on Friday on the podcast. And so if you're listening to this on podcast, thanks for being here. Subscribe, and we really appreciate you. Amy, you want to introduce our guest today? I'll bring him in.
Yes. So I'm very excited to introduce everybody to Alex. He's a Marine Corps vet, so we can't use that against him. But thank you, Alex, for joining us today.
I would never use that against them.
Never. No, I really appreciate it. I'm honored. This is great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here.
We always start with asking, why did you pick the service you picked?
Well, it's a really great story in the fact that I didn't grow up in a heavy military family. Like many of us. My grandfather served in World War II. My dad didn't. I got a book series. I got really into reading books. Like maybe some of those watching on the podcast, I got suckered into the military book club, and I bought books and I immersed myself in it, from the Rogue Warrior. But I got a really great book series, and it's about the SEALs, the PJs, the Green Berets, and the Marines. And after reading those books, there was one that stood on. It was the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps stood up because they just said everybody was a Marine, nobody was special, and that was reward enough. And being a Marine, and as the years went by, I just kept reading into it, and I knew I wanted to serve my country. And so when I was 18, I joined right out of high school, and I was really heavily influenced by the book 93 Confirmed Kills, which is about Carlos Hathcock, a sniper in Vietnam, and that's what I wanted to do, and that was my goal my first 4 years.
And so did you become a sniper?
I did. I went to school, TAC 95 in Marine Corps Base, Hawaii. And so I think it was about, it was just shy of 21 years old. So I was able to hit that. That was my big goal for my first 4 years. And I was able to hit it.
How long were you in?
I did 26 years. So I retired in 2019. So I went, rose the ranks from private to master sergeant. So that senior enlisted pinnacle was right there, to be a master gunnery sergeant, which is a highly respectable rank in the Marine Corps. So is a master sergeant or gunnery sergeant. And I really enjoyed that. But the community that I wanted to go into was being a chief warrant officer. And in the infantry in the Marine Corps, we have a special rank called the gunner, which is an infantry weapons expert. You had to have 16 years of service, be a gunnery sergeant, and E7. And then it's very competitive. You wind up being an infantry subject matter expert and advise commanders on every level from battalion to regiment to division. So it was a good 26 years, fun 26 years.
I'm giving you a chance there, Amy, so you better hurry it up.
So I was going to say, where were you stationed while you were in the Marine Corps?
Now that's a really, I started out, I had to have a hardship tour to start out with. So for some background, I came in right on the end of Somalia. And I remember I went to school in Camp Pendleton, California, and the instructors there were very, very, some guys stayed in California, some, weirdos to them, we're going to go to the East Coast and go to North Carolina. And then there was 5 of us. I'll never forget this. I can't remember what I ate for lunch today, but I remember they separated 5 of us and they said, some expletives are going to 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. And in my head, because I had signed up for overseas, I thought I was going to the show. I mean, I was going to go, I was going to go in the belly of the beast. I was going to slay the dragon, like in all the videos. And I went to Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, right? So that, I had to take that one. That was the needs of the Corps. Yeah, it was, divine intervention, sending an 18-year-old kid to Hawaii. So I did Hawaii, I did Norfolk, Virginia, Camp Lejeune, 29 Palms. I basically ran the gamut, all 4 divisions. And, but yeah, Camp Pendleton, 29 Palms, Quantico. So it's, I got around a little bit, as they would say in the Corps.
Yeah, I was stationed at Camp Pendleton at the hospital.
So, great place.
Yeah. No one ever says 29 Palms. No. They call it 29 Stumps. Come on.
29 Stumps. But unless you're a grunt, and if you're a grunt there, I would say hopefully a bunch of the 3-7 boys will listen to this later on. But there's a special breed of dirty dogs that kind of start to love 29 Palms, and those were during the Iraq years. So I mean, I couldn't ask for a better battalion to be in 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. And that's all we did was, train hard, go to Iraq, train hard, go to Iraq, train hard. That's all we knew. And then we'd go terrorize, Joshua Tree or, get down to San Diego or LA and let off some steam. So it was you're right. Yeah. It's 29 stumps for sure.
Yeah. But unless you've been there, unless you know it, everybody thinks it's 29 palms. So.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So I'm going to jump a little ahead, but looking back on your tour and what you went through, was there anything you would have done differently?
No, I really loved it. I would say anybody that does the big speech at the end of their career, 20 years, 25 years, 40 years, whatever it is, they go, "Oh, I loved every minute of it." And I didn't love every minute of it. It's got its faults. You run into good leaders, you run into bad leaders. But that really drives you and makes you better. And so there was nothing that I really regret, because I took a very bite-sized approach. I had a good mentor early on, and it kept me really focused on, just when I would get frustrated, to just focus on those short little milestones, those short little mountaintops, which was, hey, just get through this enlistment, or get through this deployment. I know such and such is frustrating you, or this leader's frustrating you, or, you've got orders to someplace you don't want to go, but that kept me focused. And instead of, worrying about where I was going to be at my 20-year mark or 30-year mark, if I was going to hit retirement or if I was going to be promoted or not, I just focused on the short term, that enlistment or that deployment, or sometimes just even that day.
So I have a question. So you said, and I appreciate that you said there was good leaders and there was bad leaders. Looking back, do you feel like you grew more as a leader with a good leader, or more as a leader from the experience of dealing with a bad leader?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's a really great question, because initially I didn't really know what leadership was. I mean, I thought I knew what leadership was. It was what I read in all those military books, is Navy SEALs and Green Berets and the big names. And then you realize you're being led by somebody that's a year older than you or the same age as you, because that's just how the breakdown worked. And I think initially I learned more. And I would say my first 4 years, 8 years, I learned more from bad leaders, because it helped me say, if I stick around doing this, I will never, right? And that's a tough word to say. I will never treat people like this. And I can't say I probably was perfect, right? Because you learn from the guy or gal that's leading you. But I sure try to use that when I wanted to react and I wanted to act out and I wanted to. There was a lot of hazing in the early 90s, and right, wrong, or indifferent. That's right. That's what everybody knows. There was a little bit frat house style leadership, and but I learned from a lot of bad leaders. And I think those bad leaders really thought they were doing the right thing, because they learned the same thing from their seniors and seniors. But in the end, as I got older and I went up the pyramid a little bit of leadership, I really learned more from good leaders, where it's like, what did it take that leader to get here? Did they fake it till they make it? Well, those guys or gals, they were pretty easy to sniff out. So I just steered my way from it. And I just tried to find somebody that I looked up to, that was a good person, that was a person of character. Like I didn't care if they were a general. I didn't care if they were a staff sergeant. I didn't care if they were a corporal. I just was looking for somebody that had good character, that I knew at the end of the day that they were the same person in uniform as when they were out of uniform. And that, because that was the biggest thing to me that really crushed me. It really removed hope sometimes over the years when I was in the Corps. Was I'd see somebody like, oh, this person is a perfectly groomed, manicured Marine. But then, outside, off duty, they were not a good person. They were not a nice person. They were not living those values and that ethos 24/7. And that was tough for me, because I was hitting that I believe button every day.
And please don't take this wrong, but why did you stay in for 26 years and not get out at 20?
You know, I wonder most days about that too. I was just talking. My brother's still in the Marine Corps. He's bless him. He's a recruiter in Michigan, and we have that talk. I was like, I didn't even know you could go to 20 years. I didn't know anything more than. I mean, I was a 6. My recruiter, if he's still out there, I made that dude's day when I picked up the phone because I was a 6-inch putt for that guy. No drugs, no problems, no criminal record. I was like, I want to be that guy on the recruiting poster that's crawling around in the ghillie suit. And he was like, he couldn't get his pen out quick enough. And once I got to 20, which is like one of the best days, like when he hit 20, it was just amazing. I remember waking up going, yep, that's today. But I was an officer at that point in time. I'd worked so hard to be a chief warrant officer and a gunner. I really felt that every year after 20 was really my payback to the Marine Corps more than anything. Like I had on any given day, I could have walked away. I could have said, you know, screw this, I'm out of here. But I really, you know, maybe some guys or gals will weigh in on this afterwards and be like, that guy's full of it. But I really tried to use I did it leading up to 20 years, but I definitely tried to be that guy every day after my 20-year mark to be like, my expiration's coming. It could be tomorrow. I could wake up and say, screw this, and I'm out of here. But I really was like, hey, I have a voice. I have commanders to advise, and I'm going to tell them 100% unfiltered what they need to hear because that's what I got paid to do as an officer, as a chief warrant officer. And what were they going to do at that point in time? Unchief warrant officer me, ungunner me. So it made me a little bit.
They could,
you know. But I mean, as long as I'm staying.
You want to start over there, sir? You're
no, not at all. I mean, and I think most commanders appreciate that because you know it gets lonely when you go up to the top.
Right.
And I mean, I would sit when I was a master sergeant, I was a regimental ops chief down in 6th Marines. It was very, very kinetic. We were, you know, had a lot of people going to Afghanistan and finishing up Iraq as well too. So it was just this big churn, and we'd go sit in briefs for the general, and the battalions would brief the CG before they leave, and you'd leave and you'd kind of nudge a guy and say, they're not telling him everything, you know. They're like whether it's readiness or whether it's training, because nobody wants to like, I mean, literally nobody wants to take their armor off, right, and show that they're fallible and they have weaknesses and there's gaps in their plan. And so that really drove me good. But I mean, I probably didn't get as many awards as I should have, right? But it was worth it to me. And I think I worked for some really great commanders, and as far as I know, they appreciated it.
All right. So a last question, then I'll yield the floor to Amy. So how long were you a sniper in that you actually did the sniping part of it?
On and off. So when I went to school, and then I never went back. I never went to a platoon then. Years later, I did a tour as a platoon commander in Iraq. And then years later, I did another tour as a platoon sergeant in the Lejeune battalion. So I went to school in Hawaii. I spent some time in California running a platoon. I spent some time in North Carolina running a platoon. So, I mean, maybe collectively 4 years, 5 years, probably. And no, it's tough too, because, you know, if you're following the Marine Corps news, that's been a big, the MOS has been shelved. You know, it used to be 8541. Now it's 0317. It's a big sore spot in a lot of our hearts. But you know, I think a lot of the guys, one of the things that we push out to them is that doesn't take away anything you've accomplished in it. So it was great. I love doing it. It's such a tight knit community, and we've really bent over backwards to look out for each other.
I'm sorry. Did I hear you say that they no longer have snipers?
Yeah, they just. This is the great thing about retirement. Sometimes my days and weeks are off. But it was maybe a month ago, I guess, or so, that the message came out. So, yeah, they made a decision now. The Scout Sniper platoons are going to become Scout platoons. So that's the deal. The schoolhouses will run their final classes. The platoons that are on deployment and scheduled to deploy will deploy, but in the near future, going into just like right now, that everything's slowly getting figured out and where they go. And if history tells the tale, the world will need Marine Scout snipers again. And the great thing is those guys, and there hasn't been a female that I know of that has gone through the schoolhouse, but those guys, and maybe one day those gals will be needed, on battlefields. I hope and pray. I've got 3 little boys and 1 grown-up boy, and I hope they never have to go do that. But I don't think they won't be gone long. Just like anything, it ebbs and flows, and there'll be enough institutional knowledge still left. There's a lot of great guys that I don't think they're just going to shelve all their knowledge just because the Marine Corps says it's got to go away. I think they'll be teaching precision marksmanship and observation and everything they can to pass that knowledge on, whether it's in a scout platoon or a cat platoon or a mortar platoon.
Yeah, has it ever been shelved before in the past?
I believe it has.
Sorry, Amy. I apologize.
I believe it has. I don't know the exact details of it, but it always. I mean, for years it was an 18-man platoon. I've deployed with over 24 guys in a platoon before, and whether this guy's school trained or not school trained, when the phone rings and people have to go on deployment, guys need to get behind those guns and do things and get behind binoculars and spawn scopes and do things. But I don't know the level. I don't know the history, sadly, off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure. Because it's still pretty new. I mean, like there were snipers in World War II, Korea and stuff like that, but the modern program, is post Vietnam, in Vietnam, and then post Vietnam. So at some point in time they shelved it. But I don't really know all the details.
Okay. Thank you. The floor is yours, Amy.
Well, thank you. So what year did you retire?
I retired in 2019.
Okay. So in 2019 with the Marine Corps, I think you might be our first retired Marine that we can ask this question. What was transition services like for you?
Oh, that's
transitioning. That's a
great question. For the Marine Corps, there's been different acronyms and transition assistance program, which I think retirees have it relatively good. I could say that, and some people could disagree, but I mean, with Skill Bridge going on now, I know a lot of senior leaders that have done that. Plus you have LinkedIn, plus you have all the social media, and you're just building your brand and connecting with people now for over years and years and years. So my transition was, a week long, just like the young guys and gals. But I think the benefit of that is it's very executive. Mine was very executive focused, so it was a lot of what you're worth, what you need to do. Here's the things you need to do, because there was less of us really going through it, right? Because everybody in the room's a retiree, whereas, in the other room, all the young guys and gals that are getting out 4, 8, 12, 16 years, there's so many of them that they're just kind of moving them like cattle through the transition process. Whereas I felt mine was really focused. And it was a good chat. It was a good course. But I think that the biggest part of it was walking into it. There was a lot less stress for me because I knew I'd already had a 26-year network in the Marine Corps, guys that were my platoon commander when I was a knucklehead Lance Corporal were, lieutenant colonels and colonels at that point in time. So or maybe have already gotten out. So I was really, I thought it was pretty good training, but the executive level of it, I thought was really good for me.
So, what was your first job post Marine Corps?
My first job post Marine Corps, I went and worked as a program manager for a company that does training and training support. And that really ties to that transition piece, which, that networking piece is the fact that my job, some people would say, hey, it's who you know. I was always, as I was transitioning and some of the mentors I had, it was like, yeah, it's kind of who you know, but it's really who knows you. So I was stubborn. I I don't think that's probably a surprise if we were to continue to talk. That you're right. I didn't want to go do this. I want to go do VA. I didn't want to do that. I woke up one morning when I decided to retire and basically said, well, I'm getting out in 6 months. I was coaching rugby, the All-Marine rugby team out in Rugby Town Sevens. My roommate woke up one morning and said, hey, when did you know you want to get out? He said, I just kind of knew, woke up, another day, and then retired when I got back. You dropped my papers. And so that job was introduced to me by my former All-Marine rugby coach. I was just, putzing away and just kind of watching my retirement date come, and phone rang and he said, hey, you have a great network. You're willing to work hard and get stuff done. I wasn't a certified PMP, but he said, hey, we want to bring somebody on and to work this training and training support contract. And that's where my opportunity was. It was a really relatively easy interview, meaning quick interview, not easy. It's still an interview, but a quick interview and a quick turn. And there I went, got out of the Marine Corps on a Friday and started working on a Monday.
So why rugby?
Well, I mean, I'm biased, right? As I sit here with a rugby cap on, I got into rugby because I got called a naughty name when I was leaving the barracks trying to go to Chow Hall in Hawaii, and it most rugby players recruit other rugby players based off of a little bit of like chest puffing. They kind of say, hey, did you play football? And then someone goes, yeah. And you're like, well, then just come play rugby. And by the way, we don't wear pads and we're not, sissies like football players. And hey, we party pretty hard afterwards. And so I was like, yeah, that's great. I really just want to go eat. And so when I got into it, I really enjoyed the fitness aspect of it. I love the collision aspect of it. And the party's a pretty good time too. And it's a great culture. And so, and I need that. Like, I'm almost 50 years old and I still play rugby. It's free counseling to me. I can schedule at my own leisure, and it's just a sport that I love. And those that are in the rugby community, we really do. We look out for each other. We look out for the young guys and gals, especially in the military that are transitioning. So like the All-Marine team, we have really a legacy team that continues on after you play All-Marine called the Old Breed. And we really look out for the young guys and gals transitioning.
Ooh, what are you doing now?
Well, that's a little bit of softball one. Amy and I used to work at Travis Manion. So I transitioned out of Travis Manion about close to a month ago. I was the regional lead for Maryland, Virginia, DC area. But that was really, really great. And I love Travis Manion Foundation's programming, but kind of taking a look at all these things. So someone had to tell me, this is going, man, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And they're like, well, you need to figure it out eventually. But they also reminded me, they said, you've only been on the Marine Corps for a couple of years, so you're really like a 25-year-old kid trying to figure out. I did what I wanted to do for 26 years. I loved it. I got to go camping and hang out with my friends for 26 years, long walks on the beach with a 50-pound ruck. It was awesome. But, sooner or later, your body gives you some of those subtle reminders that, you're kind of losing a step. And so it's time to transition out of the Marine Corps. And then the PM jobs are great, but I can really, we were talking about Zoom meetings and work meetings. I can only kind of sit in them so long. I've got to be outward facing and moving. So now what I'm doing is I'm the game day events manager for a professional rugby club, Old Glory DC, in the Washington DC area, and just working on some other things, some extra education, and just spending time with my kids. I spent a lot of time away from them. My op tempo was really, really high. When the guys were in the field, I was in the field. When the guys were training, I was checking in on them. So it wasn't, it's a 365-day job. And so, the rugby job that I do now is really great because I'm an extroverted person. And I love trying to plan all these things to make everybody have the best 2 hours of their Saturday when they come out to one of our matches.
Sorry, it was such a softball. I was just curious because usually people get out after 26 years.
It might be a softball, but it's definitely got a little bit of a, maybe it's a wiffle softball. It's definitely got some movement to it.
What was the first thing you stopped doing once you got out of the military? From the military, for me, it was 1400, 1500. My wife's a nurse, so she still does it, but I'm not.
Now, see, like that's one of my favorite things about kind of going back to Travis Manion. I got involved with Travis Manion by going through their Spartan Leadership Program. One of the greatest discussions I had during it was like, was I living a single story? Because I walked out so quick. It was like, all right, I got up, I put in my leave and my TAD request. I went to my transition classes and did a couple job interviews and went my medical stuff, and I walked. And it was probably a good 3 months, and my uniform was in medals, and we're just sitting in a box. So I think the first thing I did was go, that chapter is closed of me being Chief Warrant Officer 3, Marine Gunner Alex Carlson. And when guys reach out now and they're like, hey, Gunner, what's up? I have to remind myself that they're giving me a gift, that they're respecting me because, that's what they're used to calling me, or they still respect me. They still see me as a sir. But that was probably something I fought initially, where someone would be like, hey, sir. And I say, we got to get over that one. I'm Alex. You're, Ed, you're Amy. Let's talk. We're here like this. So that was probably one of the first things. I didn't want to have any of that structure. I had my own self-discipline, but I didn't want to have any of that structure where, hey, you have to be here at this time. Like, I don't have to do anything. I'll go sit, I will sit crisscross applesauce, right? And do absolutely nothing. Hey, you need to be at this. No, I don't have to do anything. Right. Like the first thing I did was like not do anything that was structure, didn't set an alarm, didn't shave for a couple days, didn't make my bed, just completely undisciplined for a couple days.
A whole couple days, huh?
A couple days.
Damn.
My wife might say otherwise, but it was definitely a couple days. It was just great. It was just great to have. It was great to know that I did 26 years of what I really loved doing. Every day wasn't great, but I loved doing it for 26 years, and that I set my family up. I knew that at least my basic bills, our basic needs were covered, and that was going to set my kids up for the long term. And that was just such a breath of fresh air. All I wanted to do is be like, hey, all right, I should go hang up these probably beer smelling alpha uniform and my awards that from the president and the commandant. They're just in a box. But I was like, you know what? I don't have to do that today. I got to go full circle and go back to being an 18-year-old kid who was like getting ready to join the Corps and had no responsibilities but me. So it was good for a couple of days.
Moved into the basement kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sat on the couch down there.
Yeah.
So you're in DC area?
I'm in basically the DC area. So if you're familiar with Fredericksburg,
mm-hmm.
So between DC and Richmond. So I live in a county called Spotsylvania. It's crossroads of the Civil War for all those fans out there, and it's only Spotsylvania out there. So the cool thing is I meet people and I tell them where I'm from. They'll usually see it after when they're driving on 95. I always tell everybody, if you're driving on 95 heading north, it's the last breath of fresh air you'll get before you hit traffic. And if you're coming out of DC, it's where it finally traffic opens up and you're like, oh, thank heaven, we're through it. So it's a nice quiet area, good schools, good people, and we live out in the woods a little bit, so we just kind of enjoy that slowdown post-military.
Go ahead, Amy. I had my
I think that's good. I think also, like, I got into a certain point in my life where, similar to you, like, I'm just a little bit more stubborn. I'm sorry.
Stubborn. She's not a little stubborn as her husband. There's no little about it.
Little stubborn. You just took a few days. It is the way we are, I think. Yeah. So I do want to say thank you for coming on. And Ed and I don't get a lot of time to talk sometimes before shows. So he didn't know that you had left the Travis Manion Foundation, or even that you work for them.
I had no idea. I didn't even
Yeah.
read their little post on it. I just
Yeah.
showed up today.
So, but it was, I will say, I was super surprised when you gave notice that you and a couple others, that I just was, because I'm out here in the Pacific Northwest, and I will tell you this, Josh shared, he hates the Pacific in the Pacific Northwest. He just thinks that's ridiculous. You would call it the Atlantic Northeast.
Right. That's right.
And so like we were together last week, and he said that, and I was super surprised because I've never heard anybody like say that, like not like the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
And he was like kind of accusatory, maybe a little bit of knife hand. And I'm
Right.
like I didn't have the history of the Pacific Northwest or anything like off the cuff ready, because nobody had ever not liked it. But
Do you have it ready now?
I don't.
Okay,
my
just
point,
curious. You
actually,
act like
when
you
circle
did.
back, was that Iris said, "See you go." And although we didn't have a lot of interactions, I always enjoyed. I think I was trying to help you with camera and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Tech, Ed. This is like the only person that I've ever tried to help with tech on my own. And
You can see I'm still struggling.
That's okay. Just don't move anything.
That's right.
Appreciate you coming on the show. Appreciate you sharing your story, because it will help other people, not, about understanding what they might want to do, understanding maybe they want to go in the Marine Corps, the Navy. I guess the Marine Corps is the Navy, because I guess it's a department of the Navy. I'm not sure.
Men's department, they would say.
But yeah, we're just a higher form of marine life. So the Navy. Anyway, you have to be. I spent my whole time with the Marines, so of course I love them. So
yeah, we love our docs.
Yeah. But thanks for sharing your story. If there's anybody else that could want to, that would be good for our show, please send them our way, because we really are looking for people to be on. So
that's awesome. And I'm honored. I really appreciate my time. My time with TMF was great. Amy's always been great. And I think one of my favorite things about Amy, and it's now great to meet you as well, Ed, and knowing another, one of our corpsmen, and like Amy's curious. So I do miss that about some of our meetings. She's her curiosity and asking questions always, and I think that's a great thing about this podcast. So I didn't know until Amy invited me. I was like, well, this is great, because any of these little chances to get the word out there, I think there's more and more guys and gals that probably want to tell their story. I guess that would be my pitch. At 26 years, multiple combat tours, I didn't think I had a story to tell, because I felt I was blessed, because I walked away externally unscathed. And anybody that I guess maybe listening doesn't think that 4 years, or maybe even 2 years, or whatever it may be, maybe it was a bad decision that you made, somebody's going to benefit from that experience and that story. So I guess that would be my pitch to anybody listening to this, is if you don't think you have a story to tell, that you really, really do. And you need to embrace that, because even an old jarhead can learn new tricks and can jump on a podcast.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the whole purpose, like your story, is you went from enlisted to officer, right? Which not a lot of people know you can do that.
Right.
I walked away after I had my degrees for the Navy, because I didn't want to be a service officer. I wouldn't have a choice. I'd be on a ship. I was the first corpsman, never saw a ship in his life except to see his friends on. See you guys later.
Good luck.
I knew that if I went back because I got my degrees I was in, to be an officer, I would be on ships constantly. And that's not what I wanted to do. That's why I got out. So, All right. That's all I have for today. Amy, why don't you take us out of here? Just our favorite part.
It is. I absolutely love to be put on the spot. I'd just like to thank everybody for listening. And if you like what we do, definitely follow. And if you know somebody who should be on the show, let us know. We would love to have them.
Alex, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it. Amy, thanks for being here. By the way, Ed, thanks for being here. Oh, no problem.
Yeah, thanks.
I got it, Amy. Don't worry. I'll do it all for you. All right. Everybody make it a great day. Thanks for watching. And please reach out to somebody, any veteran, anybody who just reach out to them and let them know you care, because that's how we can stop the 22 a day.